I'm in practice live, as it says. So, no, I'm just doing it. This is practice. Why won't it let me? Okay, so is it recording? Okay, well, I don't know if it's recording. Well, I'll try. Okay, so want to actually read the Canadian national anthem, the proper Canadian national anthem, originally written in 1880 in French. But don't let that fool you. 1880, French was still arguably the lingua franca, the lingua franca of scholarship around the world. But it was translated. We don't see it on any of the Canadian websites, which is really weird. But the message uh, is often missed. See, me as a Canadian, when asked what makes a Canadian, I've always talked about, kind of like in religion, the via negativa, that Canadians usually define themselves by what we're not, right? We're not Americans, we're not English, right? But I never realized that resident within our own anthem, right? Because I was severely dyslexic, so I spoke English and French. I did read it, but not to the extent that I can understand and translate and truly grok what was meant, the meaning. So, I'll start off. So, French lyrics were by Sir Adolphe Basile Routhier. So, I'm going to go to French. I'm going to go through the entire national anthem in French before I discuss, mainly because I don't want to have to be switching back and forth and have my French suffer, right? Because when I speak French, I think in French. When I speak English, I think in English. So if I'm trying to do both, I'm either thinking in one language and translating to the other. I'm best to vacillate between the two. So again, Canadian national anthem written in 1880 by Sir Adolphe Basile Roustier. Et ça commence. Ô Canada, terre de nos aïeux, ton front est ceint du fleuron glorieux, car ton bras sait porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits, et ta valeur de foi trempée protégera nos foyers et nos droits. Protégera nos foyers et nos droits. Sous l'œil de Dieu, près du fleuve géant, le Canadien grandit en espérant. Il est né d'une race fière. Béni fut son berceau, le ciel a marqué sa carrière dans ce monde nouveau. Toujours guidé par sa lumière, il gardera l'honneur de son drapeau. Il gardera l'honneur de son drapeau, de son patron, précurseur du vrai Dieu. Il porte au front l'oreille du feu, ennemi de la tyrannie, mais plein de loyauté. Il veut garder dans l'harmonie sa fière liberté. Et par l'effort de son génie, sur notre sol asseoir la vérité. Sur notre sol asseoir la vérité. amour sacré du trône et de l'autel. Remplis nos cœurs de ton souffle immortel. Parmi les races étrangères, notre guide est la loi, sachons être un peuple de frères, sous le joug de la foi, et répétons comme nos pères le cri vainqueur pour le cri et le roi. There you go, that's our national anthem in French. Now I haven't translated it all completely myself, but I have translated it closer to the way I would think. So it opens with, O Canada, land of our ancestors. That's terre de nos aïeux. Forefathers, but, so we'll say ancestors. Your brow is crowned with glorious flowers. So, ton bras, sorry, I jumped ahead there. My apologies. So, in French, it's ton front est ceint de fleurons glorieux. Right, so your front, your forehead is ceint, like ceinture, like a belt, right? So it's circled, right? I like that, crowned with glorious flowers. But what that means is it's, fleuron is little flowers. Because your arm is skilled with the sword. That's my own choice, because I personally think this is one of the most important sections here. Car ton bras sait porter l'épée. So it's how your arms know how to carry a sword. Actually, it might be a better translation. Il sait porter la croix. So though your arms know how to carry a sword, right? This idea of training and being able to wield the sword, yet it knows how to carry the cross. But not specifically the Christ illusion, but especially in French, la croix also sounds like to understand, to know, right? And it's very similar to le droit, which is the right, which is la loi. So, again, car ton bras sait porter l'épée, how your arms know how to carry the sword, il sait porter la croix. It knows how to carry the right, the cross, this Christ ideal that I am my brother's keeper, right? That if the system's meant to carry on, then we look after each other. So it goes on and it says, ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. I love that, right? So your history is an epic of the most brilliant exploits. I love that. And the next line is, et ta valeur du froid trempé. That's very often mistranslated. So it's et ta valeur. Sometimes translated as your value, but valeur is also like your courage, your strength, your value, your worth. So your worth is your tempered faith, right? In this case, we're not talking strictly Christian faith. We're talking about, right, being better. So it says, protégera nos foyers et nos droits. This one's interesting again because protégera, that means we will protect our foyers. And this is what's interesting, because foyer in French is the living space. Lebensraum, right, in German. But this is why we use the term in English, foyer, because it's where you come into the home. It's, the entrance, but it's, the living space where, you get what I mean. It's often translated as our homes and our rights. Nos foyers et nos droits. But yet protecting our homes, our communities, our living spaces, and our society. Right? This is what all of this is designed to do, to keep the system going for longer. Sous l'œil de Dieu, près du fleuve géant. So it's under the eye of God. Right, and this is an illusion also that we're blessed, right? We're a beautiful country, right? Close to a giant flow. It means a great river, the St. Lawrence. But in this case, right, it's an illusion. It's resident even in Chinese philosophy, near 10,000 years old. This idea that crossing great rivers, or the great rivers coming out of the Himalayas, represent God and providence, right? Because water is life, right? And it goes on. It says, "Le Canadien grandit en espérant." So, right, we grow up hopeful, but espérant is more. Esprit, right, is spirit. So you grow up with a blessed, hopeful spirit. There's so much more in the French. I've talked about this before. Next line is, "Il est né d'une race fière." Right? And this isn't specifically pointing to any particular race. And at the time, Christian was the majority of faith. So you can't really hold it against them. This idea that il est né d'une race fière, born of a proud race. We are all a proud race. Think about the 100 trillion chance that we're all here to be able to be better and look out for each other. And then the next line is often poorly translated. It says, "Béni fut son berceau," which is benefit, béni, blessed, fut son berceau. So it's blessed was his cradle, right? Growing up in Canada, he's been blessed since the cradle. Blessed is his potential, right? This idea of an allusion to Christ, baby Jesus. And so le ciel a marqué sa carrière. So the sky will or marks his career, his journey, his path, his destiny. Dans ce monde nouveau, in this new world, right? This was the beginning. It was a hope for a new future and potential, right? And it says, toujours guidé par sa lumière, always guided by his light. Il gardera l'honneur de son drapeau. He'll guard the honor of his flag. Now, having grown up in a military family, grown up on a military base, you learn, multi-generations of my family have served, and many of them died. You learn that the flag, it is a symbol, but it's not the symbol that most people think. It's a symbol of this esperance, this spirit and hope. To a soldier, the flag represents who he's fighting for, his home that he wants to protect. Right? To an oppressor, it does mean, to the oppressed, it does mean the oppressor, but within it, this flag holds a truth that is beyond the individual. So this is why it talks about guarding the honor of the flag representing this idea that we are predestined to be better, that we are good people. So I'll go on. De son patron, précurseur du vrai Dieu. Right, so in English they say under the eye of God, right? So it's of his patron, de son patron, right? This idea of providence, right? All there is because of providence. So whether you believe God of Spinoza or God of Christianity, whether it's the energy that makes flowers grow or it is someone specifically guiding our destiny, matters not when you understand that the blessing of the chance for us to be here and the precursor for the real, the true God, as it says, a real, vrai, true, or right? This idea, it's often lost, but in Greek it's kenosis. My apologies, kenosis. which is this idea of to empty oneself of your personal aspect, this selfish, delusional idea that you are an individual self. The world revolves around you. I've appropriated a French term to give this idea, au bas du ciel. You're not the base of the sky, right? The world doesn't pivot around you. You're just a part. Right? You may be a hinge pin in your own destiny, but that doesn't mean that well, it doesn't mean that equanimity doesn't exist. That was the word that I misspoke initially, was koinonia. It's a Greek word that means communion, not the physical act, but the metaphysical act of communion between man and God and man. The fact that all of providence is connected. So again, this real God can be seen as the aspect of Christ, so we can each be. In Sanskrit, I believe that's avam at Brahma. So I am God, but it's the idea that all of existence, all of Dharma, is Brahman nature. Everything that exists is the aspect of God. So we are ourselves a God, but everything we do is an aspect of God. That's what this teaching is. It goes one step further and it mentions il porte au front l'auréole du feu. Oh, je m'excuse. I was speaking English for too much. Il porte au front l'auréole de feu. So he carries at the front this halo. What do they translate it as? An aureole. Aureole is a halo of fire, right? So he wears on his forehead a halo of fire, right? This idea of exactly what I just said, that we're not invoking an external God. What we're talking about is that we are each our own aspects, our own manifestations, our own avatar of God. And it goes on, ennemi de la tyrannie. So it's not talking about someone else. It's talking about each and every one of us is the enemy of tyranny. Mais plein de la loyauté. But we're filled with loyalty. Il veut garder dans l'harmonie. Il veut garder dans l'harmonie. So the English translation is he wants to keep in harmony, but it's deeper than that. Il veut garder dans l'harmonie. Very specific choice of words. Il veut, il. So he, but they. Il, multiple. Veut, wants, wishes. Garder, to guard. Yes, keep. Guard, to protect, to value. Dans, in. They translated that properly. L'harmonie. Now this is L apostrophe harmony. So it would be dans l'harmonie, which is again this a universal, shared, collective harmony. Sa fière liberté. Right? Their proud liberty. Sa. I mean, they translate it as his, il to he, but again, in this case, because it's French, we're talking in the plural, the way I prefer to talk about we and us. And the next line goes on and says, et par l'effort de son génie. So this is, and by the effort of his genius. I don't argue that that translation is possible, but I much prefer to highlight et par l'effort de son génie. Remember how I said earlier, terre de nos aïeux is our forefathers, our ancestors. Génie, you could call it your potential, you could call it your genius, but I much prefer this idea of it's saying both. It's both our potential, our genius, but it's also genus, right? That which came before, that which powers us, right? And so the final two lines are sur notre sol asseoir la vérité. Sur notre sol asseoir la vérité. Sorry, not the final line. My apologies. So on our soil sits the truth, right? This is this idea that the new world could be a place where all brothers of all faiths and beliefs, as long as we were looking to live together in harmony, could. And so the final, my apologies, the final paragraph is Amour sacré du trône et de l'autel. So sacred love of the throne and the altar. Remplis nos cœurs de ton souffle immortel. So fill our hearts with your immortal breath. Parmi les races étrangères. Parmi les races étrangères. So allow these strangers of all races and faiths, right? Allow parmi les races. So it says among the foreign races, but parmi is among, but it's also to permit, right? And it says notre guide est la loi, right? Our guide is the law, but again, there's some deeper meaning to it, right? Sachons être un peuple de frères. Sachons être un peuple de frères. So the translation is, let us know how to be a people of brothers. But sachons, it means we know. Sachons être, we know how. We are. Sachons être un peuple de frères. We know how we are brothers. Equanimity. That's why I've mentioned this before. In English, equanimity is poorly translated, but in French, it's where it comes from, équanimité. It's clearly laid out. It's this universal brotherhood. I think it's called pluralism in English. In Sanskrit, it's upekkha, upeksha, upekkha in Pali, upeksha in Sanskrit. And it says, notre guide est la loi. Sachons être un peuple de frères sous le joug de la foi. So it's translated under the yoke of faith. But I love it. It's notre guide est la loi sous le joug de la foi. This idea of, it's not a yoke that limits our potential. It's this idea of this connection. Because believe it or not, yog or yoga in Sanskrit is a yoke. Very similar. But this is actually an idea of yoking oneself to the divine, the same idea of providence. So again, even in Vedanta, it explains that you don't have to believe in a supreme being in any form. Because yog, this yoking, this connection, this equanimity, this attachment to all of creation, is this yoke of faith in Buddhism, in Vedic teaching, and in Christianity as well. This idea of koinonia, that I am my brother's keeper, God is my keeper, I am God's keeper. That's truly what faith is. In Latin, it was a synonym for trust, right? Fides. And so here we go. It says, et répétons, and we will repeat, and also to repeat it. It's inviting us, invoking us to repeat. Comme nos pères, like our fathers. Right? This is an idea, right? Le cri vainqueur. And it's translated as the winning cry. I like to actually go into vainqueur in French. It is the winning cry, but vainqueur. It's like, what's the English expression? It'd be like to vindicate. Vainqueur is like victory, a cry of victory in the face of hopelessness, even. I mean, this is why it was chosen, this idea of espoir, this faithful, this hope, this potentiality, as it were. But what are we supposed to cry, the winning cry? Pour le cri et le roi. Pour le cri et le roi. that seems odd, right? 1880, right? Christ, you can understand. I explained this in the two previous paragraphs that it's very likely we're talking about the aspect of Christ. Right around this time, Tolstoy had published a couple of books that was explaining this misunderstanding that Christ wasn't necessarily anyone particularly special when it comes to being a god per se, but what he was this rare among us that could live for others and could really truly be an example for others. And the king, le roi, again, this idea of Christ and the king can be like I teach with Buddhism. The heavens and the hells can be something outside of oneself, but truly, the most liberating teaching is that these heavens and hells are within oneself. And until you realize that all of this is self-born, then you can maybe understand this for Christ and King. Right? Being able to see outside of oneself. I mean, that's what we talk a lot about meditation and mindfulness. When you take psychedelics, it's freaky for some people because it can be, for the first time in their life, the first real experience of what I call ego recontextualization. Simply put, they realize they might not be as special or unique or individual as they once thought. So this change in their perception of self and other is transformational. And I do believe the same message is resident in the Canadian National Anthem. So on that, I guess I'll leave you and see if I wasted all my time on this.